Business pays for everything. There's no other money other than the one that's raised from business. You could say, oh, we could tax people more. Well, where does that come from? That comes from business.
I will be working 24/7 as an ambassador for this city, basically selling London to the world 24/7, bringing business here, bringing tourism here, telling over and over until people are sick of me saying it, why we're the greatest city in the world, because that's the job. You got to pull the business in. And like you said, the current mayor, man, he's really good at politics. He's very good at the press release. He's very good at the photo op. But when we see him when he goes out in public, he literally gets harassed and he has to run and hide. I've been told by Labour Party headquarters he's not allowed to go out in public until election day because it might jeopardize the elections.
You've spoken to loads of people on your thousands of people over the last few weeks. How many of them have said, Brian, I really want that statue renamed, or I really want that overground station renamed, or I really want another cycle lane through London? How many?
Most people come up to me and before I can open my mouth, they say, get rid of him. I can't believe he's here. Fire City Con. Seriously, before I can even say anything, but I do know that this will be the hardest job I ever have, for sure. Because getting in there and doing the work is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also the most important thing I've ever done. We always know the hardest job is the one you should take because it's going to give you the most growth. It's going to make the most impact. It's the right thing to do. So I keep thinking I'm pulled to this. This is the job I must do as opposed to the job I can do. There he is, Mr. Simon Dolan. How are you, sir?
No, I'm very good, my friend. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you having here. I was giving you a quick bio, to people that are out there, but you're the guy really that took the UK government to court over the COVID lockdown. You're also a really successful businessman, and you're quite an aficionado for motor racing, kickboxing. You're quite an interesting guy, Simon.
Thank you. Yeah, kickboxing was a while ago now, but I still follow the MMA and things like that. And I just like to do stuff. I'm similar to you, really. You're a business guy. You like sports and so on. And I think we've ended up in this political world that probably neither of us wanted to get into, but felt that we had to. Me from the legal perspective, and you, of course, running for mayor. So that's quite interesting.
It is interesting. Simon, you bring up a good point there because, a lot of people in business and entrepreneurs, they stay away from the world of politics. They're like, I don't go there. I don't talk about that at the dinner table. But, both you and I think we felt like we couldn't not get involved. Like we had to do something because, I don't know, it was kind of liberty at stake or our freedom, or it was about principle. Is that what it was for you?
Yeah, I think, you said, why people said to you, why did you run for London mayor? And you said, well, so I could tell my kids that I did my best. I tried something. And I said exactly the same thing to my family, because we didn't have to do it. We didn't have to bring the court case. Could have just quite happily lived and did what every other high profile businessman did, which was precisely nothing. And just hang it out and see what happened or let somebody else do it. But I couldn't have lived with myself, I don't think, if I'd have not just tried everything, and ultimately we weren't successful in court, but at least we raised awareness. And I think history will look very kindly on what we tried to do and not quite so kindly on the politicians which have ruined the country.
Yeah. And people forget back, in April of last year, Simon, May, there weren't many people having the hard conversations. We were streaming on our platform. We got censored and had to create our own platform. But I had countless entrepreneurs, economists, professors at major institutions talking about the opposite narrative than the government was giving us. But there wasn't many people. There were you were taking them to court, but not a lot of people were having those conversations. And it wasn't happening in the mainstream media, was it?
No, not at all. I mean, quite the opposite from mainstream media point of view. And they have to take a lot of criticism, I think. Yeah, it's a truism that bad news sells. And so the newspapers and the media, they're just going to run scare stories all day long because people click on them. If it's 1,000 people died of COVID today, you're going to click on that story. If it's 1,000 people recovered from COVID today, you're not going to click. You're just going to feel good about it. So, of course, you've got the government that are spending a fortune on advertising with these publications. And so, of course, they had a vested interest in just keeping the narrative going. And you see that, now we're saying, oh, there's a South African variant and there's a I don't know, the Mexican variant, the Kent variant, and then they can't think of anything else. So then they say we have a double variant from India, just to try and keep the fear going. And some of this sticks, some of it doesn't, and some of it does. But a lot of it is just driven by media scare stories.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was doing so much collateral damage last year when it came to the economy that it was just, I couldn't stand by and watch it happen. I know you couldn't. And we had so many broadcasts of people talking about the massive damage we were doing to ourselves economically, which of course translates into our younger generation being hopeless for the future, our mental health being dangerously low, our physical health. I mean, there was so much collateral damage with that, but there was just a few people kind of doing that counter narrative. While meanwhile, like you said, mainstream kind of goes for the clicks and the views, but it's hurting everybody in the long run. And it was great to see people like you and we did, and a few other people really talking about something different, and then take it to the next level, which is kind of what I decided to do the last 6 months, and saying that, because when we started 6 months ago, this was still something quite counter narrative, to talk about getting London back to work.
Yeah. And it just, as every day goes past, you realize just how much it's necessary to get London back working again. It's all very well Genghis Khan going on about building cycle lanes and this and that, but cycle lanes don't create jobs. No green initiative ever creates a job other than the government-funded one. We need small businesses open, and that's why in your manifesto you're saying about helping small businesses. And you're quite right, because that's where everything starts. What people forget is that every big business started as a small business one day. Starbucks was just one cafe once. McDonald's was just one cafe, one restaurant once. And this is where the economy, this is the lifeblood of the economy. And now, you look at London. I came to see you a few weeks ago. And as I was driving through, it just everywhere shut. And okay, we're here now. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is get it open and get it working and welcome people back into London. Get rid of the congestion charge and let these people open. It's so necessary that we have a business person that oversees this.
Yeah, it's so important. And just like you said, I think it's 98% of the GDP in London is small and medium-sized enterprises. And it's also the culture of London. If you think about the great things about London, it's those black cabbies that are independent drivers. It's the tailor that makes my suits. It's that cafe. It's like, that's what gives us the reason people want to come to this great city. It's not because of, these mass businesses that are here. And I think you're referring to the manifesto, and I got Simon an early digital copy of this thing, and we've got 50,000 of these printed out. And I'm telling you, when I'm out in public with these and I'm showing them to people, they all want to grab them, because it's quite a fun, readable document. But like you said, the top thing here is rebuilding London's economy. And as you said, it's abolish the congestion charge, get people into London spending. It's zero out business rates till the end of the year, because these businesses are barely hanging on. And then the big thing we got is our great celebration event. And again, it's show me, don't tell me is the way we're campaigning. And it's kind of the embodiment of a pro-business mayor to pull off an event, 31 days, 20 million people in the city, and show off the best London has to offer, but also tell the world that we are back. We've experienced a tough year, but London is back and ready for business. And we want to show the world maybe we've recovered quicker than anyone else. And we could pull in all the tourism business that Europe might be seeing this whole year. And I'm really excited when I talk about these policies. And people in the public get it. I don't think you need an economics degree to know that this makes sense.
These are common sense policies. It's a bit like Trump did in the States. It's just common sense stuff. If you need an economist to explain what your manifesto is, the manifesto's wrong. It's just common sense. We need to get people back working. We can't just keep handing out furlough money left, right, and centre, because at some stage someone's going to have to pay for it. People understand that.
Yeah.
We don't want to charge people to come into London. We want to welcome people into London.
Yeah.
People understand that. It's pretty straightforward stuff, but it's not something that your usual politician would do.
I gave a speech yesterday out at Olympic Park, and I told a bunch of supporters that were there. I said, London was built on business. That's why we have the great culture, the great art, the great architecture, because people came here to do business. The Romans didn't come here for the view. They came here because it was a center of commerce, and that's the way people have always come here. So we can't forget the reason we exist. I would bet you could ask anybody that's watching us now who's from London, why did you come here originally? It was probably for business, or later when you got a job and were supported here. So if you focus on business, everything else can potentially be solved because you get the tax revenues. People are doing what they love. They're actually making money. They're keeping their mental well-being good. But if you don't have that, it's very hard to do anything. And like you said, a cycle lane doesn't help. An LTN doesn't help. A statute committee to rename things doesn't help. The mayor came out today and he now wants to rename all the overground lines. That's his big plan for TfL, which is going bankrupt. And I've come out with some simple solutions in my manifesto about how I think we can run TfL at a profit. Things like an infrastructure levy, separating out the 5,700 acres of land that TfL has and getting that to be used in affordable housing and commercial property. This isn't rocket science, Simon. It took me 8 months to study this, but he could have done this, but he never would as a Labor mayor.
He just.
I think I'm losing your audio just here for a second. Let me just check if it's my connection, Simon. Oh,
okay. We're back.
Yeah, there you go. You're back. You're back.
We're back again.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we were having at Genghis Khan, weren't we? Yeah, he's a politician. He hasn't got a clue how to bring London back. All he's just a grifter. You know, he enjoys the limelight and he enjoys the money that comes from the job. But he's no way. If he was going to get London back on its feet, he would have done so by now. He's had years to have a go. Yeah. We've got knife crime is up higher than ever. All crime is up higher than ever in London. And he's made a complete mess of everything that he's done. You know, this is the guy that was calling for curfews and then wasn't calling for curfews and wants lockdown and then doesn't want lockdown. And you said earlier, you know, it's business. Business pays for everything. There's no other money other than the one that's raised from business. You could say, oh, we could tax people more. Well, where does that come from? That comes from business, you know. So it's got to be business led. And you're right. You know, there's other countries now that are opening up. So you look at Florida. Florida's flourishing. Texas is flourishing. And these places are getting a march. But Europe isn't. So we do have a chance in London to open up quickly and get, as you say, get the tourism and just get things going back. But it's not going to happen with Genghis Khan doing it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and one other thing I try to remind people, it's not going to happen with a few dates in the calendar of what you're allowed to do. I mean, we're in the worst recession in 300 years. You can't just say, okay, everybody go back. It's like you need someone in charge that can be super proactive. And I think the job of mayor, I will be working 24/7 as an ambassador for this city, basically selling London to the world 24/7, bringing business here, bringing tourism here, telling over and over until people are sick of me saying it, why we're the greatest city in the world, because that's the job. You got to pull the business in. And like you said, the current mayor, man, he's really good at politics. He's very good at the press release. He's very good at the photo op. But when we see him when he goes out in public, he literally gets harassed and he has to run and hide. I've been told by Labor Party headquarters he's not allowed to go out in public until Election Day because it might jeopardize the election. So it's that in contrast with me. I'm literally trying to see as many people as possible. Sometimes the police are trying to stop me because I'm trying to listen. And, you know, this 50-page manifesto, okay, a lot of it came from people at the House of Lords, senior metropolitan police officers, high-level members of TfL, architects, but a lot of it came from people in the street saying, Brian, my cousin got stabbed last week. What can you do about it? The police, when they stop and search me, they do it in a really disrespectful manner. Can you help? I go talk to the Metropolitan Police. They say, yeah, Brian, you get me more police officers. I can train them in the community. Affordable homes. I spoke with one of the architects. He said, we can build modular homes on TfL land. And we do a drawing on Hackney Wick of exactly what it's going to look like. So it's amazing how many people actually want to see London do better. And they said, Brian, the reason this doesn't happen is because of politics. That's what they said. And it's inside the TfL. That's what the police said. They said this could have all been done years ago, but it's the politics that stops it. And that turns my stomach, Simon, because in the business world, you either do it right or you get eliminated, right? Or you either do it right or you lose everything that you own in your company that might have taken you 10 years to work. And so you hold people accountable. You deliver value to the customer. The customer here is the citizens of London. And I don't see value being delivered to them at all. I see excuses. I see billions of bailouts. I see taxes being raised. And you can tell me, it gets me riled up, right? to see it run this way, because it should be like rightfully. A business here. Yeah.
And you tell me, you've spoken to loads of people on your thousands of people over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
How many of them have said, Brian, I really want that statue renamed, or I really want that overground station renamed, or I really want another cycle lane through London? How many?
Yeah, I mean, none. Honestly, Simon, most people come up to me, and before I can open my mouth, they say, get rid of him. I can't believe he's here. Fire City Con. Seriously, before I can even say anything, they're slamming him. I'm talking old ladies down to teenage kids. He didn't do what he said. I'm talking people from the Asian community, Muslim community, people from England that were born here, people from the international. Everybody says he just hasn't delivered. And we all expected big things back in 2016. And just 5 years later, like you said, knife crime is up. The houses aren't built. The TfL is going bankrupt. There's no plan for the economy. And people are frustrated. And exactly, nobody is saying, can we get these things? Now, lately, he's coming out with a lot of these initiatives that play to people's emotions. You know, they go, the Tories are your enemy, is what they go after. They go after, let's rename some stops and let's make you feel like a victim in your own city. But that's all great for emotions and talk. But then you're going to have to live in this city for another 3 or 4 years. And if you don't have a job, or people can't even move around the city because there's so many cycle lanes and so many restrictions on where taxis can drive, and the TfL is continuing to go bankrupt, and the mayor is going to keep blaming the prime minister. That's what they do. They go back and forth while the rest of us suffer. And that's why I think people have been really open to me as an independent candidate. Some people just say, as long as you're independent, Brian, we're with you, because we're tired of the politics and the bickering back and forth. What's it like to watch from you, kind of being slightly removed from London, to watch this whole show, you know, when you see the current mayor, you see the Conservative candidate, you see me in there doing these completely very kind of new ways of campaigning. What does it seem like to you?
It's entertaining. It's entertaining in the way that, Trump's campaign was entertaining in 2015. But, we're in unprecedented times. And if you're in unprecedented times, you can't have the same solutions as have been rolled out in previous years. You need something different. And you're coming at it in a different way. And probably what a lot of people don't realize is that you don't have to do this. You're spending all your own money but you're spending your own money on doing this. You haven't got any big backers and so on. You're doing it because you're passionate about it and you want to make a difference. Well, who would you rather vote for? Someone who's willing to put his own money on the line to get things up and running, or a politician who is going to get paid every which way and has done nothing for the last 4 years? If Khan was going to do something, he would have done it by now. It's not that he hasn't had the opportunity, but he's made a mess of it. So get out of the way and let somebody else do it. And if the best he's got is to say, vote for me because I'm Labour, that tells you all you need to know. People are entirely disenfranchised. We've seen Keir Starmer today get thrown out of a pub because of the way that he's not been any opposition. So I don't think they can get away with it. I think there's going to be a lot of, in the same way as there was in 16 with Trump, I think there's going to be a lot of shocks coming in May 6th, is it?
Yeah, May 6th. I think you're right. And it was interesting to see, Keir walk in and as a Labour guy thinking that everyone is going to kind of welcome him into their establishment, and people are yelling at them, throwing them out. And like you said, just having that Labour name isn't enough anymore, and it shouldn't be enough. You can't rely on a brand. That's why big companies go bust, because they lean on their brand too much and they don't constantly innovate and deliver value to the customer. But that's what you have to do in business. That's what politicians should be doing as well. And I didn't see any innovation over the past year. All I saw was they had one solution for everything and they used it. I didn't see anybody coming up with ideas, brainstorming, trying to work with different sectors to find solutions. I didn't see any of that. And that's what he's got going for him, is really this one single party, and the party that maybe someone's parents or grandparents voted for, and then pushing all those emotional buttons. And yeah, you're right. I am financing this myself, which means they're all my ideas. No one tells me what to say. By the way, you can't tell me what to say when I'm streaming live anyway, so it would be impossible. But, I try not to harp on about this too much, but you're right. I there's other things I could be doing with my time and my money right now. I could have bought a house, but I decided to do this campaign. And so, and it's made me question myself a few times over the last few months, like, how much do you really care about doing what's best for this city? Because this is costing you. And then I had to look in the mirror and say, I do care. And I really believe in what we're doing here. And I really believe in these ideas. And when we printed this thing, it was a really emotional moment, to be honest, because I was speaking on Sunday and I said, look, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, and of course my bus was next to me, and I said, hopefully it's not my own bus, right? But if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I said, one of you in the crowd could pick this thing up and run with it. You know, it's all here. It's all here, what we can do with London over the next 10 years. And so I feel good that it's published. The ideas are out there. Unlike you, I haven't published many books. And so this is like a first piece of print, but at least it's my ideas. It's the culmination of 8 months of really hard work. I mean, we've seen some other manifestos published and they're like, 13 pages long. I mean, this is 50 pages of detail. Like I said, work with people behind the scenes. So I feel proud about that. I don't know if people see that. I think people think business people just, that we have money that we don't care about. I mean, business people got there.
Care about money far more than anybody else, I think. That's why we're in business.
Yeah, I mean, you started with nothing. I got to London. I was broke as a joke. And so like the reason I stayed in business is because I do watch every pound and every penny. And so when we go to invest in something, we take it seriously, right? And so, but look, I think people feel that. I think it's a feeling of when people meet me. It's funny, Simon, when I meet people in the street, I was in Enfield a couple of days ago. I rolled up with the bus, which I'm sure has got to be a weird thing for people to see. I pop out the door. I'm wearing my 3-piece suit. They're like, what's going on here? I got the American accent. I walk over to this girl. She's taking a break at one of her hair salons. And she's like, actually, I've seen you on Instagram. And I was a junior member of parliament, something they do with kind of these teenagers. And she said, and I wasn't quite sure about you. And she started asking me questions, I pulled out the manifesto. I'm like, this is what we're going to do here. This is what we're going to do here. This is what we're going to do here. And then at the end, she's like, can I take a picture with you? I think I'm going to vote for you. And so I think when people spend some time with me and they get this in their hands, then they really think, well, wow, here's some new ideas. And, we've been waiting 5 years and people know people that get stabbed on the streets and they feel unsafe. And yeah, I think they're feeling frustrated. So we'll see. On May 6th, I think we're going to have a big surprise upset. I think people haven't really calculated what we do digitally. They're using polls. And, polls, I mean, about polls.
Polls had Hillary Clinton winning by a mile. Yeah.
Exactly. And they had an even race for the last election here in 2019, right? And it was a blowout in the end. So I think the polls haven't seen a candidate like us before. And again, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I walked out of my house this morning and, the garbage man said, I'm voting for you. I know who you are. I appreciate you. The taxi drivers, buses honk their horns when they go by. I mean, it's just weird. All sorts of people come up to me. And they know me and they know my policies. That's the thing. They're like, I saw your policy video. So, we're excited, but we're also going up against a machine, Simon. I won't lie to you. I've contacted some media outlets and they say, Ofcom won't let me interview you. I have to give 50% of my time to Labor, 50% conservative. And I'm like, are you serious? This is what's happened to democracy. It's like there's a lot of institutions that are they kind of benefit from this status quo, the two-party system, this illusion of choice, and everyone's conditioned to it for so long that they're not motivated to break it per se. So
yeah, I think that's changing. I really do.
I think you're right.
Because what's happened with COVID, no one likes Labour, no one likes Conservatives. So I do think it's changing. And the election on May the 6th is going to be the first indicator that we're going to have of that. And if we get people turning out in the numbers that we should be getting out, then why shouldn't you get in? No one's working harder. And I know you're going to carry on working hard. And that's the other thing. Is one thing to put the money in, but it's another thing to put the time and the effort in and to get up. People see you being kind of, full of energy and stuff. You don't wake up like that. You've got to drag yourself out of bed the same as everybody has. It takes effort. It does take effort. And doing this stuff takes effort, and getting the bus takes effort, and talking to people all day long. It's exhausting. And to be doing it as long as you've done, that shows to me is actually far harder than spending the money on it. So no, hats off. It's good to watch. I'm really excited that we got someone that's so enthusiastic about London.
Yeah, it's funny. There was I came out of the store the other day, and some 12-year-old kid rode by on his bicycle, and he said, "You're the mayor, innit?" And I was just like, okay. I said, this is a good thing. Here's a kid who probably never looked at politics before, and he knows that I am running for the mayor of London. So he probably knows something about me. I do feel like we're engaging people more than ever and trying to bring them along the journey. I think the last year, Simon, made people really think, wait a second, our leaders, they control our finances, they control our businesses, our health, our children's education. Maybe we should start paying a little more attention. And also, I think they're questioning some of their previous media outlets and some of the parties. They're all gatekeepers, really, whether it's a newspaper, a party. It's something from an old school way of doing things that got you to make certain decisions. But we all know we're going more digital, more direct to people. So yeah, I think we can happen. And you're right. I've been campaigning now for over 6 months. Can you believe that? I mean, there's now 20 candidates that are ready to be voted for mayor, but some of these people just showed up a few weeks ago. I mean, we launched October 14th of last year. So, and the bus has been on the road since January. And being on that bus is crazy. We logged, I think, almost 4,500 miles on that bus now. Every single borough of London twice. It's madness. I've had probably over 1,000 conversations with people. I've put mostly of them on YouTube. I usually record them with an iPhone. And people love that stuff. Now, of all my social media posts, the ones that people love the most, Simon, is when I literally have a phone in my hand, or one of my team does, and they're sticking it while I have a real conversation with someone. And we post the straight thing to there. People don't like the fancy videos with the cool music. They just like it real. And I think because they say that could be me, and I can see someone who's speaking, from the heart, or at least real in person. So
it's genuine, real life stuff rather than politics.
Yeah,
that's what people like.
I honestly looked at some of the recent things that have come out from some of the candidates, and I just thought, man, this is the leader of London with an £18 billion budget, Simon, that's going to be making important decisions about our police, our transport, our businesses, and it's going to be influencing a lot of other things of what happens with the city. And that what I see is just a bunch of jokers. I see a bunch of jokers. The BBC had a quote unquote debate the other night. At first I was insulted. They only invited two candidates, the current mayor and the conservative guy. But then I watched them bicker back and forth for 30 minutes. And I said, wait a second, I've seen this every month at the Greater London Assembly. They've been doing it for 5 years. It's the same argument. It's like an old married couple. And guess what? The taxpayer pays for that argument every single month, because we paid both of their salaries for the last 5 years. In addition to a bunch of the other candidates, we pay for your salary. And so it's a show. It's a sideshow. It's almost like a farce. And then nothing happens. So it's a little frustrating, but, also encouraging if people can just connect with what we're saying.
They are, I think, for sure. It's no one watches the BBC now anyway.
I think you're right.
It's irrelevant,
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, I think that when the mayor published that he was finally running, and announced his thing, I think the exact press release showed up on the BBC News site, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, wow, so much for even a version that this is going to be an independent news network. So yeah, it's been fascinating. It's been a great journey for me, to say the least. But I do know that this will be the hardest job I ever have, for sure, because getting in there and doing the work is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also the most important thing I've ever done. And so I've had this conversation with myself on long walks, Simon. It's like, you know what? Is this really what you want? But we always know the hardest job is the one that you should take, because it's going to give you the most growth. It's going to make the most impact. It's the right thing to do. So I keep thinking, I'm pulled to this. This is the job I must do, as opposed to the job I can do. So we're going all in. We got 17 days left. And we're still blasting. We are getting a lot of pickup from media for what it's worth, which is great. We're still challenging for debates. I really doubt the current mayor will debate me, but we've been pushing for that for about 3 months. Lately, I've been challenging him to swimming competitions, breakdancing competitions, Ironman competitions, anything he wants, really. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Maybe arm wrestling. You've missed off arm wrestling. I think you'd be well in there.
Maybe arm wrestling, but yeah,
kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, anything.
Something, I don't know, anything. But I just, I honestly think he's probably just trying to hole up in the office and trying to see if the PR can win this for him. So
he's just hiding. He's hiding because he knows he hasn't got anything, and he's just hoping against hope that people will vote for him because they've always voted Labour. That's it. He's got nothing to offer.
All right, so you're forecasting a big upset on May 6th, is that it?
Huge upset. It will be a huge upset as well, yeah, and then a big party. That's what I need.
That's fantastic. Simon, any final thoughts for people that are tuning in as far as the way they should be looking at, the future, even from a business perspective, whether they understand business or not, or entrepreneurs or not, as far as how I guess, how important it is for our future?
Well, I think you just got to look at the past and go, well, okay, what have current mayors done with London? And let's just take Khan for instance. The last 4 years have been a disaster for London. You can't blame that all on COVID, because there was 3 years or 4 years without COVID. So this has just exacerbated things. But like I said before, business is the only thing that creates wealth. Any government job is just paid for out of taxes, which is paid for via business, whether it's your own business or whether you go and work for another business. That's it. There isn't anything else. So if you have a mayor that's pro-business, then you're going to have a chance of getting London out of the mess that it's in. If you've got a mayor that's basically woke, politically correct, I hate all these terms, but somebody who's going to spend more energy renaming statues and trying to figure out whether they've got the right quota of this or that or the other on certain boards, is never going to get out of it. Like I said, cycle lanes don't create jobs. People create jobs. People go out there and set up small restaurants and bars and all sorts. Tailors, your tailor must be worth a fortune now. But other than him, you must understand, even if you don't understand business, you have to understand. We're losing connection a bit.
You're back now.
Yeah, business pays for all this stuff. So if you can, if you are there, go vote for someone who's pro-business. And as far as I'm concerned, that's Brian.
Yeah, well said. And like you said, I think people deep down know that those furlough checks they're getting, I think some of them, they know deep down that ultimately they'll pay for those. And it's the business that allows us this incredible lifestyle and this incredible city. So we just can't forget it. We can't just sell it down the river because it's convenient. It is the lifeblood. And there's a way to do it and also have a great city. Last thing I wanted to just quickly ask you about is this, concept of freedom of speech. You've been really big with your Keep Britain Free campaign and pushing forward with that. Obviously, we were really talking about it a lot last year, and people still question me as the future mayor of London about, whether I still believe in free speech. Obviously, we've seen recently the government trying to crack down on protests and how people are allowed to protest. How important is that freedom of expression or even digital freedom of speech on a platform even like this going forward? And how do people try to make sure they don't lose sight of something like that?
Well, it's the fundamental basis of our lives. If you haven't got freedom of speech and freedom of movement, then you're living under a totalitarian government. So you're living in communist Russia or communist China. And we're not there yet, but if we're continuing going down the path, and people say, well, you're allowed freedom of speech, but you're not allowed hate speech, or you're not allowed certain types of speech. Well, that's the whole purpose of freedom of speech. Because if you're only allowed to say things that other people agree with, then you haven't got any freedoms. And you always, you think, people use the straw man argument. Oh, so should people be allowed to say you should go and murder someone? No, of course, that's against the law. That's incitement to violence. It's nothing to do with free speech. But if people can't realize it, I think, because it feels as though it's the right thing to do, to clamp down on certain types of speech. But you always have to ask yourself, who's the arbiter? Who's the person who says you're allowed to say this or you're not allowed to say that? Well, the arbiter is the government. So the minute the government doesn't want you saying something, so I had this, the government doesn't want me talking about whether there's a problem with vaccinations or not. And, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, who knows? But time will tell. But if you're not allowed to express that thought, then the government has basically blocked you and knocked you down. Now, what's going to be the next thing? Let's say that you're not allowed to say anything about vaccine passports. Let's say you're not allowed to criticize the prime minister. It would go on and on and on, and it never stops. We've seen this with the lockdowns. It was just going to be 2 weeks, or it was just going to be 3 weeks. And we're, 15 months down the line, and now we're talking about vaccination passports. Otherwise, you can't move anywhere or go anywhere or go to the supermarket. That's what happens. It's piece by piece by piece by piece. And at the crux of it, and at the crux of the entire Western civilization, is your basic freedoms. Your freedom of speech, your freedom of movement. That's it. Your freedom to live your life without interference from other people, provided you're not breaking the law. It's that simple. It's what all great societies were built on. And all the bad societies, and I'm talking about communist societies, were all built on the opposite. No freedoms.
Yeah. And if you look throughout history, I think Tim Kennedy, who's been a guest on my show, former Green Beret and mixed martial artist and UFC fighter. He just said, if you ever look back at history, whenever people are suppressing freedom of speech, burning books, these always end in dark times. They end in great devastation for the human race. There hasn't been, I think, a single example where it ends out working out really well for everybody.
No, never in human history.
Never. And like you said, we're not at the China levels yet, but every time you go down those, you go a little bit closer. And it's, again, those freedoms, the freedom to choose what you want to put in your body, right? Or your choice to get something in your body, or your choice to put something in your brain, or to speak something. These are the basics. And when a government, or God forbid, a technology company, which can be more powerful than the government, starts to say that, then there's a real problem. And freedom of speech is supposed to be uncomfortable, because it's supposed to be, again, it's freedom of speech if it makes you feel uncomfortable and goes against what you think. So when people advocate for freedom of speech, you have to be advocating for people saying things you don't want to hear. And although it's uncomfortable in the short term, and it might bruise your ego or make you even have to make your own arguments better in your own head. And I had a great discussion with one of my guests on London Real that says, the good thing about freedom of speech is you can make sure if you're sure you feel that way, because you actually have to back up your own thoughts. Otherwise, you walk around in a world where you say, oh, these things are all true. And you never have to actually kind of get in there and mix it up. And so it's important to have these difficult conversations. And I'd rather have them out and open as well, as opposed to some dark place on the web. So
because people think these things, whether they say them or not.
Yeah.
You haven't stopped people thinking them. You might stop people saying them, but you haven't. And you've just driven them underground, and that isn't a good place ever.
Yeah, and people asked me last year about some of my more popular broadcasts, and I said, well, I had the second largest YouTube live stream in the world. Clearly, people wanted to hear this, and no one ever wants to engage with that argument. And it's like, clearly people want to hear these ideas. They want to talk about it. And so we need
But if you think about that, you're two adults talking about stuff.
Yeah.
How is that a threat to anyone?
I know. We're two adults.
Regardless of the content. And then the content was actually just really nice. You're talking about David, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But he's a lovely, loving guy. You don't have to agree with what he says, but he's a genuine guy, and that's it. But whether you agree with him or not, surely to God, you can't just shut the guy down because you don't agree with what he says or thinks he's way out there or something. It's like we say, it's a fundamental to our society.
Yeah. Yeah, again, we had a relaxed conversation for 2.5 hours. We never incited violence. We never incited the overthrow of governments. We just had a conversation that, by the way, ended up with us both saying, make your own choices. Don't listen to us. Act out of love, not fear and hate. That's always the underlying principle.
Yeah, that's really controversial.
Yeah, I know. I always trust someone that says, "Don't believe what I say. Make your own decision." Like that's always makes me feel good. So again, that's probably a whole nother episode. We'll talk about all this and go into detail about that. And we're making a movie about everything that happened last year. So I'll get you to the premiere as well. Simon, look, I really appreciate the fact that you went out on a big limb last year and had this lawsuit and went up against the government. I know you didn't get the result you wanted, but that result in a way proved to us kind of that, what was actually happening, which was maybe it was impossible to get that result. And it helped a lot of us push forward and have conversations. There weren't that many people that were going outside of the envelope last year. And it definitely made me feel good having conversations with entrepreneurs and scientists and stuff at the time, knowing that you were out there too. So thank you for that. Thank you for being supportive of me running for mayor. It's always great to hear your enthusiasm on the back of my enthusiasm. It helps. And I'm expecting a massive upset on May 6th, and I'm glad you are too.
Keep fighting, my friend. Keep fighting.
All right. Thanks so much, Simon. Follow this man. Check him out. Buy his books. He's got a couple of great ones out there. And Simon, I'll be talking to you on May 6th about the win. All right.
Look forward to it.
All right. Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate everybody. All right, good. I appreciate everybody here. Make sure you register to vote if you haven't. And, of course, vote on May 6th. Check out all of our stuff on our website, brianformayor.london. All right, thanks so much. We'll be doing more of these IGs for the next couple of weeks. Bye.